Hello and welcome. Thanks for popping in. If you're new to the channel, please give a like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell if you find this content helpful, and you'll be notified of the next video release. I wanted to cover a couple of problems that come up with routes. If you've seen the previous video, you'll know right where we're at. If you have not, check out the video in the top right-hand corner of your screen, and you will be all caught up with routes. So I'm going to give just a brief overview of where we're at. We have this very small app. Here's our app.jsx, and it just has a couple of routes, a home page that's just displaying home, and a not home page displaying not home. I'm using Vite to serve this locally, and what it looks like is this. So we have home and not home, and you can see when I click the home button, it takes me to the base route. And when I click not home, it takes me to the not home route. So now that we have that out of the way, let's add another page. So let's go ahead and create another file here, new file, and let's call this also not home.jsx. And I'm going to use my nifty autofill there. Thank you, Visual Studio Code. Alright, and let's just wrap this in an H1 like our other pages. Cut this out, put it in the middle, and save that. And now we need to add it to our navigation. So let's go into our nav and add that here, and the route is going to be also not home. The button is going to say also not home. Now we need to import that route into our application, so let's go to our app.jsx and import also not home. One other thing that we need to do is we need to simulate that these pages have lots of content. So let's go into back to our also not home, and let's give this div a class name of lots of content. Save that and then copy this, and let's also put that on our original not home page. Paste that, and then in our CSS, let's add that class. Lots of content, and let's just give this a height of 110 view height. Okay. Now inside of our app.jsx, we have our route there. Let's go ahead and add a secondary navigation at the bottom. This is going to help me to demonstrate what's going on here. Okay, so save this and let's check this out in the browser. All right, so we have three routes now. We've got the home, we've got not home, and we have also not home. Now, if I scroll down and I go to not home, you can see that the route is changing as I'm changing directories, as I'm changing what path I'm on, using this second navigation tool down here. You can see when I click not home that the route changes, but I'm still scrolled down to the bottom here. So that's one problem, and this is tied in with a related problem. So if I hit the back button, you'll see that this does update, but this is the second part of this problem is one of those issues where you would run into where development version runs fine, and then when you go live, this is where you would run into that. So if you try to use the forward and back buttons when you are running an application that it has client-side routes, such as we've used here, what really happens is that this also happens if you try to hit the refresh button. What actually happens is that in a live version, the browser is going to send a request to the server. Now, these pages, there's no page on that server that's called not home. There's no page on that server called also not home. So anytime where your front end or the user's front end is making a request to your server for a page that doesn't really exist, they're just going to get a 404. So if someone was in your application and they were doing some stuff and then they hit refresh and your and your server is not configured to use browser history, then they're going to lose their route. They're going to hit a 404 not found page. So let's fix these problems, okay? So now that I've showed you what they are, let's first fix the scroll problem. And to do that, we need to install another package. So let's go to our development server and shut this off and do an npm install React Router. And then we can go ahead and fire that back up. npm run dev. I am using Vite to power this. Check out that video in the top right hand corner of your screen if you are not familiar with Vite. So back here, let's create a new file called reScroll.jsx. And what we're going to need to do in here is let's import use effect from React. And then we also need to import from our newly installed React Router use location. And then what we're going to do here is let's just do const reScroll, and we're going to assign this an anonymous function that is going to return React fragment, and inside of the fragment we're going to return our props.children, export default reScroll. Make sure you've got that all spelled correctly. Now what we need to do in here is let's define location. So say type const location is equal to use location. And what this is doing is giving us the location of what path someone is on. And now inside of a use effect, so this triggers every time that someone changes their location, we want this to trigger. So this is what a use effect looks like if you're not familiar. We have an anonymous function that we do things in, and then we have a list of items at the end that is optional that tells it to run again anytime this changes. So for us, we do in fact want to do that. We want this code to run every time the location changes, every time a person changes their route. And what are we going to do? We're going to window.scroll to 0, 0. So once you have that in, save. And now in our app.jsx, let's go ahead and import that. Import reScroll. And we're going to wrap our routes with this reScroll component. So let's do that. And save. And now if we go to our browser and I scroll down and I go to not home, you'll see that it now properly scrolls the window back to the top so that you don't have that weird stuck at the bottom problem anymore. when you change routes as you would normally do, changing from one page to the next. Every time you did that in a web page, you'd start at the top. You wouldn't come to that page at the bottom. So that solves problem number 1. Problem number 2 is actually a fairly straightforward fix as well. Inside of our app.jsx, where we've imported BrowserRouter, let's go ahead and erase BrowserRouter and instead put Hashrouter. Okay, and here let's get rid of BrowserRouter as well and replace with Hashrouter and save, and come back to our application, and this time we want to make sure that we're getting a fresh route. So let's go all the way back to localhost and hit enter. You can see now in the URL bar that there's this #, and what that is, so the Hashrouter uses the hash portion from window.location.hash in order to keep the UI in sync with what route a person is on. So if I were to go to also not home and then hit the back button and do that on the live version, you would in fact go back to the proper page. So hopefully that is helpful. But a couple of caveats with that. Hash history does not support location.key or location.state. For most applications, for most small applications, that's not a big deal. I did run into a situation where we had a Gatsby application, and Gatsby, for those that aren't aware, you can use some state management that Gatsby has built in, and it does rely on location.state to pass that state down to different pages. So this would not work with that. And then also, if possible, you would want to configure your server to work with browser history. Now that's a much more complicated topic involving server configuration, and inside your client you would need to be manually adding and removing history from your browser. History as far as what page a person is on. So a topic for another day. For now, we've solved 2 problems. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, and you'll be notified of the next video release. Head over to my website, consultingninja.tech, where I've compiled loads of free resources. You can message me directly with questions or comments, or comment below on any topic you'd like me to cover. Until next time, take care.